streaming live on the Kenya Film Commission YouTube and Facebook pages. This, of course, is the Real County Festival, sponsored by, supported by, created by the Kenya Film Commission. My name is John Alan Namu, and if you've been joining us, of course, you've been watching the first day where we're screening some of the films that made it from the jury selection panel to this festival. We have watched, I should say, and I'm seated here with members of the jury panel, myself being one of them, and we watched a huge number of films, over 100 films from across the country, and the selection that you've been seeing are some of the ones that we thought cut the mustard when it came to the kind of quality that we're looking for from the counties. My name is John Alan Namu. I'm an investigative reporter and a producer, and I'm seated here, as I said, with members of my jury panel, of our jury panel, I should say. It's not mine. I should stop taking ownership of all of this. All right, seated to my extreme left is writer extraordinaire.
Thank you.
Lily Wante, because she also moonlights as a comedian. So if anybody from the judging show is watching, there's your lady. All right, right next to her is King Muriuki, filmmaker extraordinaire as well. I'll use extraordinaire very many times this afternoon. Right, and right next to him is the only doctor in our panel, Dr. Zippy, of course, filmmaker, producer, lecturer. Let's hope your students are watching, because if they are, they can tweet at Real County Festival and follow the streams, of course, share on all of your socials. And let's get this started. So like I said, we've been discussing these films for the past about 1 week. We were taken somewhere to a conclave somewhere in this country to decide which films would make it to this festival, and it was a very difficult task. Lots of quality from across the country. The film that you just saw was among some of the ones that we selected. Lame, which was produced, let me see here, Lame produced by John Risper Kiragu, and a fairly interesting film, drama, some moments of comedy there as well. And maybe we should start with Lame, right? So Dr. Zippy, should I call you Zippy or Dr. Zippy for the rest of this one now?
Which one is better? It depends on whether you want to write a check or not.
All right. So since I'm not writing the checks, I should just call you Zippy.
Yeah.
Right, so Zippy, what for you stood out from Lame, right? What was the thing that you felt warranted its selection as part of this film festival this year?
I think one thing that I liked about Lame is a strong female character. Yeah, I'm a feminist, and apologies.
Yeah.
Yes. I like the fact that they had a strong female lead, and there was consistency in the characters. The characters didn't change much. You know, sometimes you watch a film, and halfway through the film, you're like, why is this character doing this? This is not typical of an introvert or an extrovert. But even Lame himself, Lamek, we could see the consistency of his character from beginning to the end. This nervous wreck of a man, and even when we thought he's not gaining confidence, we could still see tidbits of that. And I think I liked that when it comes to the direction that he took. Yes.
Okay, Lily, let me come to you on that, because if there's consistency with a character in a film, that means that there's consistency in writing.
Yes.
Was there anything that jumped out at you in terms of the writing of the script that then would produce Lame that was memorable, that stuck with you as something that warranted being part of this festival?
First of all, the character of Lame was just hilarious. The entire film was hilarious, and I love to laugh, as does everyone else. So I loved that they kept humor that wasn't slapstick. It was just really natural. Like, you naturally laugh at this guy because he's just so lame. So lame. He looks lame.
Yeah.
He's lame. He does lame things, and it was really, I loved that. I loved, and also they kept the story more or less on point. Sometimes people go off on a tangent and get lost in the story they want to tell, but this guy, we know he wants to do something. There's this Supu who's distracting him from his goals, and yet he wants to achieve something. So keeping the characters funny, and also keeping the story going is really tough to do, but they made it.
No, they made it stick. Yeah, and it's a very universal theme. Boy meets girl, boy fumbles. Over girl and somehow muddles his way to the end. Right?
Fumbles the bag and the girl.
And the girl at the same time. Right? So King, as let me pay you a platitude here, as a filmmaker's filmmaker. Right? So there must have been some cinematic moments also that you felt were included in this, that made you feel that, look, this is something that Kenyans deserve to see on this festival. What were those?
For me, a scene that would stand out, for example, was when Liam was stalking, his love interest, and they fell into a puddle. That was a very nice scene to just capture the essence of what the whole film is about. Boy running after girl being hesitant, then there's this fumble, and even just seeing that moment without any audio, you kind of get what this film is about, which is very important, even as pertains to the trailer. So even when somebody sees this thing, they know, okay, so it's probably a rom-com, a drama that involves this and that, which is good. For the rest of the film, I feel like they also tried to be look-wise, just consistent with staying with the Lamech's environment, not making it change so that you constantly identify with his struggle from start to the end, which I thought was good. Yeah.
Let's speak a bit about the dialogue. Sorry, excuse me. Speaking about the dialogue and some things we've seen perhaps with Kenyan African and films from across the world, that there's a certain pressure to conform to a certain typeface, the Hollywood typeface, of what the dialogue is supposed to be. In a country like Kenya, first of all, language, English, right? So that it should be in English. And we saw some of that in some of the films that we also viewed that some unfortunately didn't make it. Did you feel that with Liam, again to you, King, with Liam, did you feel that you sitting as a person watching the movie, did you feel like this is something that truly identifies with me as a Kenyan in terms of what we heard? First in terms of language, and then second in terms of the dialogue, right? So the dialogue between characters, even the dialogue with the character and himself.
Yeah. It's a very good point you brought out, that that point rings across the board with most of the films that we watched. There's this general feeling that, as a young Kenyan, there's a way you communicate to each other that comes naturally. And I feel like that was a hindrance to communicating across the emotions for some of these characters, because you're taking them out of their comfort zone to fit within a certain stereotype, which is understood because probably most of the films that people watch are in English. But in reality, and that's what film is supposed to be, try and mirror reality as much as possible in some scenarios. It would have worked better if they even mixed up with Shang, Swahili, it would not have made me watch the movie in a different light. It might have made me come closer to the characters. So I think, that's something they should have considered.
Again, on pressure, right? When we would troop into, pre-COVID, when we troop into cinema halls, or now if you're Netflix and chilling, or whatever platform you're chilling and watching TV on, there's also that expectation sometimes that big themes are covered in movies, in feature-length films. And so if you don't have a big story, then your film can't sustain that period in time. And yet Lane was very contained in one man's dilemma, right? As a scriptwriter, as a person who's written for documentary and film, how are you able to bring out that small story? And do people feel that pressure, to start to write the big cinematic epic, films? What would your advice be for them?
Thank you for those many
questions
that you
I should say I'm doing a very poor job of being a journalist. I'm supposed to ask one question.
Question enveloped in a question, covered in.
Yes.
The pressure is obviously there to do huge themes, huge stories, and whatever. But you can write about an ant. I mean, look at our bags life.
Yes.
You can write about absolutely anything as long as you maintain the authenticity of what it is that you want to communicate. What are the struggles that this ant is having? Do I identify with the struggles that this ant is having? Oh my God, this ant has fallen in love. I remember when I felt like you can write about absolutely anything. There's this animation that my son likes to watch. It's about dust mites. You know, the rolls of dust.
Yes.
And it is hilarious because this dust is trying to get away from the vacuum, and it's actually a story. And these are people who are trying to get away from a bad situation, and they're trying to get back to where they were before the vacuum came to look for them. You know, so you can literally write about anything. And I would urge people, just be authentic. Make your characters so believable. Humanize your characters.
Yeah.
What does this person want? What are their struggles? What's the conflict up in here? And how do they achieve their goals despite their conflict?
Yeah.
And you'll have yourself any kind of story you want to write. Yeah.
Authenticity, the key word there. And Zippy, I'd like to come to you on this because you're in a boiler room, so to speak, when it comes to teaching people how to act, right? And we've watched so many, like hundreds of hours of film. Just taking away from what you saw in Layman, perhaps what you've seen elsewhere, some of the things that you teach in class, how do you teach people to be authentic? Is it something that you can teach?
I think first and foremost, there are things you can teach, there are things you can't teach.
Yeah.
We can teach you technique, but you have to personalize it. That's why when you go for audition, not all of you can be the same panel. Yeah, we will always pick this person over the other. So when it comes to authenticity, even if you're using Constantine Stanislavski, which I really so
Sorry, just run it back a little bit. As I try to swallow what you just told me. This is a classroom as well as a panel discussion. So I'm also learning. Please just say again what you just said.
Okay. So when we go back like to acting, I think the one that people love most right now is the realistic style of acting. So we say we are Stanislavskian students. But generally, even with that style, you have to personalize it.
Yeah.
That's why even when you need all like ladies at the age of 30, same size, same tone, one will be different from the other. A director will say, I'll pick this one. So how do you personalize that technique? The same way we can teach you how to write, but each person will have their own style developed. That way, when Lily writes something, I'll be like, I like Lily because there's a way she knows how to punch her comedy. I like Kajetans because I know how he likes to put the horror in it, you know. So every person must be able to personalize. So when it comes to acting styles, you know, this is so funny because today I made a post on Facebook about Kenyan acting styles.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, in the films, we could tell those ones who we can easily see were overacting, you know, where somebody is expressing dialogue, but not expressing emotion. And there are places where somebody is expressing emotion overtly and then not balancing the two. They say it is not about how you feel as an actor, but how you make the audience feel. That is what makes you a great performer. So if you are a director and that time you are the first immediate audience, does that actor make you feel, or are you trying to make them feel? So that is what I try to teach my students.
Gosh, that's a very interesting anecdote to reflect on. And as we do, I'd just like to remind people what we're watching right now. This is a Real County Festival sponsored by the Kenya Film Commission. We were discussing one of the films that made it onto this festival, and that's Lame, and the producer of Lame is John Risbakirago. If you missed it, you can just kind of scroll back on your stream and you'll be able to watch it, and then you can catch this panel again and again and again and again. Let's play that promo for you so that you can get what we're talking about, some of the characters in there, Lame specifically. Like in terms of feeling, before we play it, in terms of feeling, I felt incredibly frustrated with Lame the entire time. So I guess that if there was a job of a fumbling, stumbling guy, just me as a person who watches film, he did his job, right? Yeah. So I don't know if we have it queued up. We can take a look at Lame. All right, let's do it.
Buda. Ingia mse. Ingia nikupe kazi hapa.
Tasha, this is not really my place.
See, still this is a new beginning.
Only for you to appear like a chokora.
Story yote ilikuwa ya dem.
How do you want me to help you? This idea was strategized.
Nikupate Nairobi.
So if you're just joining us, we are here on the first day of the Real County Film Festival, sponsored by the Kenya Film Commission. With me is my panel, Lily Wanjiku, King Murioki and Dr. Zippy, of course. We're just taking a look at one of the films that made it to the festival. That's Lame, as produced by John Risper Kiragu. And of course, I should say at this point in time, our sign language interpreter is Winnie Adoyo. Thank you very much for joining us from wherever you are. This is some of the best films that we had between 2016 and 2021 from Kenyan filmmakers across the country. Of course, Lame was produced by a producer from Uasin Gishu County, so what of the County of Champions, Chamugei, and I hope you guys enjoyed that film from John Risper Kiragu. Before we move on to the next one, I just want to stay on Lame a little bit and come back to you, King. Was there anything, and because we had to be critical, I guess this is a point in time when we also let the cat out of the bag about some of the things that perhaps the producers of the film, the directors, could have improved on. What was that one or two things that could have been improved on in Lame?
I'll speak from a technical perspective. Some of the things that stood out, I'd say, were, for me, my biggest is usually sound. Sound is everything. You might have the most beautiful imagery, might have a very good story, but if the sound is bad, then it's very hard for your audience to connect with the characters. So, you'd find some places there's a lot of echo. You're not sure if they properly mic'd the characters or swung the boom correctly. In other places it was perfect. That's kind of frustrating, even as a filmmaker, because you're like, you just let the ball slip one time, and probably that was a very integral part in the storyline, and so it drops everything. Cinematography-wise, in this particular film, I noticed a lot of color shifts. You're in the same scene, same timeline, and when you switch from camera to the wide again, there are shifts in color, and you're not sure if there's a disco ball in the room or what's going on. Those small bits of consistency where you expect part of the crew, in general from the director, cinematographer, to be on the lookout for. I felt like there was a bit of lack there. Yeah.
Lily, just picking up from where King left off, script-wise, story-wise, were there moments that you felt a little let down, or perhaps moments that you felt that John Kiragu could have improved his storytelling around the characters?
First of all, let me just go straight to the scenes. Keep scenes very, not too long, not too short. Don't drag the dialogue too long. Don't keep us there for too long. Like, not too fast, not too slow, just right. And to get that right is really difficult, so I don't really blame the filmmakers for that. And also, make reactions like natural. Keep things natural, because there are sometimes with comedy, especially, getting the
comedic timing.
Yes, comedic timing is a thing. You really have to be very in tune with that. Yeah,
and that's tough.
It's very tough.
And there's an expression that the hardest thing to do is actually to make people laugh.
Yep.
that there were moments that we laughed all through the movie. I think
Yeah.
it deserves kudos. But yeah, you're right. There were some moments when jokes were kind of drawn out.
Yeah.
Or dialogue was kind of drawn out.
Yeah.
Zippy, what did you feel like, the next time that these producers apply themselves to a film, that they can take from, yes, this win, but also some of the things that perhaps they didn't do as well as they might have wanted to, and take into their next film?
I think the pace felt a bit slow in some scenes, and also at some points it felt like there were two directors, because you could feel like there were some scenes that were tight and there were some scenes that were like there was dialogue and ending dialogue that's not building on the story. So I think maybe they just need to work on pace, and if you decide it's a comedy, stick to one style, because sometimes you're like, this guy or the lady is like super, quiet and fun, and sometimes she's just like flat. So yeah, choose a style. That's why I felt like maybe there were two directors. Yes.
Or that were giving sort of like direction.
Yes.
Advice to. Okay, for me, and this is something that I'm borrowing from you, Lily, from the panel. Yes, I'm stealing it now. Something that you kept saying, show, don't tell.
Yes.
Right? So, in the dialogue, I felt that there were times, and this isn't just specific to Lame, by the way. This is something that was kind of like a repetitive theme, where you have, like you said, really long dialogue, and not enough, action that directs a viewer, because, at times I just sit back and be like, okay, if I was watching this at home, what would I be disappointed about? And it's the dialogue that was a little overbearing. I don't know whether you guys
I think there's this one scene when the boy was cleaning the house, telling the friend to go out, and the girl is at the door.
Yeah.
Then the friend, instead of just coming and leaving, the friend sits again, and nothing happens, then stands and goes. I'm like, did we need him to sit again? He could just have left them.
True.
Yeah, so
Yes.
the delays.
With stuff that is not necessary to your story.
By the time the two of them were talking, the two friends.
Yeah, it dragged.
At some point, you're like, okay, what are they saying now?
I know. It dragged, and the camera movement wasn't so dynamic that it makes me interested to know, okay, and then, yeah.
Speaking of wasting frames, let's not waste time.
Nice segue.
Yes, I know I'm segue. So anyway, let's move on to a genre of or a subgenre of film that literally cannot afford to waste a frame, which is short film. And we viewed again upwards of 15 short films over that week, and some of the ones that made it and some of the ones that you'll be seeing today are Lucy and Hurid. Let's start with Lucy. And Lucy was produced by Wilson Osiolo, who we saw a lot of content from, and Wilson's from Nakuru County. Congratulations to you, Wilson, as well as to your entire crew for the production of that. If we have the promo for the trailer for Lucy, it'd be great to show it now so that the audience can kind of follow along with us what we're going to be discussing. Of course, that will have been shown or will be shown during the course of today on the Revealing County Festival. Before we do show it, I need to remind you, members of the audience, that you can also send us questions. Send members of the panel questions that you would like for them to answer within this hour. And we'll try and get to them as snappily as we can. So, without further ado, here's a trailer to Lucy.
Kwa mapema.
joining us, this is the Real County Film Festival. We're just previewing one of the short films that we'd like to discuss right now. That's Lucy Lucy, produced by Wilson Osiolo from Nakuru County. Congratulations for making the cut into this Real County Festival. Of course, with me is the judging panel, that the jury, rather, I should say, that looked at this film. And of course, there's lots of comments coming your way right now, Wilson, as well as everybody else who's watching. Let's start with you. I was going to call you Lucy.
Oh, Lord. It's okay. I'll accept the back.
Zippy, what was it about Lucy that you enjoyed?
Revenge.
One word answer. Shall we keep it one word?
Horror.
One word?
Maybe
Silence. Just to my word. I just picking on what you've said, King. That we were just talking about how dialogue can be drawn out, right? This film had very little dialogue, and yet it's able to draw you in. And what was it about that film that was, aside from the silence, that was able to draw us in? If you remember some of the comments that you made.
I think I'd say for she the protagonist here, main character, that's Lucy. The fact that she played her role without dialogue gave her an avenue to just use her expressions, her facial expressions, and the pacing. I loved that because you never know what she's going to do next because she hasn't said anything. You're building on your own assumptions of what the overall scene is.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's such a genius way for the filmmaker, the director, the writer to keep the audience stuck on the screen, until the very end, because nobody is telling you directly what's going to happen.
Okay. I want to set up a mock debate here. On one hand, I have Zippy and right? Dialogue versus acting, right? In a film that has very little of it, who carries the day? Is it the screenwriter, the scriptwriter, or is it the person who does the direction of the acting?
Director.
actor. They have to work together, so it's a symbiotic relationship.
Okay.
The screenwriter can do his part, but I always say sometimes a director can either kill or make a good script. Yeah, because we always say we don't want the screenwriter on set because they'll be too emotional. Like, I didn't want it like that, So if a good director has such a script, then they will make it real good because they'll help the actor come on. Because if you don't have a good director, they'll even kill the actor. Yeah, technique.
Not literally.
Yeah. and speaking of technique, so we've moved from Lame, which was more of almost like a rom-com / drama, to something that's a bit more thriller like in terms of genre. If you were to give any direction to some of the actors and actresses that we saw in Lucy, what would it be? And to the people who are also watching, when you're trying to embody a character that invokes a sense of dread in your audience, like what is it that you need to tap into for you to be able to do that?
I always say the eyes are the key to the soul, whether on stage or in film. So if your eyes can't tell it, we will see it. We will feel that you are not being real with us. So even in such a silent film, we could feel Lucy because of her eyes, her stare, and that. And even remember there's a scene even before the end where it was so horrid, when the house help came to bring the breakfast. The look she gave the house help was enough to say, get out of here, I'll kill you, So it's all in the eyes. You don't even need to say the words sometimes. And even the husband, when he looked at her, he was like, I better get out of this place.
You could sense the fear as well.
Yeah, so it's all in the eyes. The eyes will tell us.
Okay.
Victoria.
And it helps that you had read eyes and a stocking. Can we talk about the stocking? That stocking terrified me. I was like, a woman who's wearing a stocking. Oh, but things are
Shave her hair.
What did you say? Like, in terms of the acting, in terms of the cinematography, what advice would you give to people who are filming stories in that genre? Like, how do you evoke those kinds of emotions in your audience? And how would you do it?
I think for me, one of the bigger things that we said also in general in some of these films, but in things like this, mystery thriller types, I feel like it's very important to get the pacing even before you start shooting. Because pacing is everything. You stay on a scene for too long, you've killed it. You stay on it for too short, the audience hasn't gotten what is going on. And one of the best ways to do that is through storyboarding. I know it's a very tedious process that most filmmakers do not want to go through because it's time consuming and you have to involve more artists, but it pays off in the end because you can even time it to an edit and with mock dialogue and with sound to just know you know what, this emotion is going to come up as well as I thought. So in addition to helping the director with the pacing and the editor, storyboards also help the cinematographer. You know what, after doing a reggae location scope, they can decide, this angle will be the best angle to just show enough of what I want, or to just evoke a certain emotion either through how much light or how much space there is within a scene. So I feel like in that aspect of production, storyboarding would be a huge lifesaver for these kinds of films.
And with stories like this also, you have to learn how to create tension. We need to be scared. Like, what's going to happen next? Why is this woman like this? Why is she staring at people with her red eyes and he's talking? Like, create tension. Make us tense so that when you have the final scene, it pays off.
That's super important what you just said in terms of creation of tension. I just want to go back to what you were saying, King, about pre-production. Because in the course of these 4 days, we will talk about some of the things that we felt in terms of the preparation for going out into the field that might have been missed or might have been included in the success, right? So this one for me felt the most prepared in terms of the thinking behind those 7 minutes that we watched. Just to come back to what you were talking about, what else can you do as a filmmaker? It doesn't need to cost a lot of money, it might cost you time, but what else should you do to ensure that when you see your product on screen, it's really a reflection of what was in your head or what you wanted?
I think, just like you said, time is the biggest investment in production above everything else. And part of that includes working with all your opportunities. Filmmaking is a very collaborative process. So sit down with your makeup artist, with your stylist, with your production designer, with your cinematographer. Just don't go for most people just go for the location scout with the cinematographer, and that's it. But the production designer or maybe the stylist doesn't know what color to go there, so that they can properly contrast whatever the main character is going to be wearing. And for a movie like this, for example, Lucy, the stalking, that it adds 10% to the character. Like this is probably a stay-at-home person. It builds on those small things, and with pre-production, you get to discuss with everybody else. They give their expert opinion about things you would probably never have thought about. Maybe the stalking thing was brought up by the stylist who was not involved in the scripting process. But they sat down together and decided, this was the casting as well. I feel like this movie, this short film works because of the casting. The maid and the main lady already contrast just by visual appearance and by that social style. But it's incredibly intimidating without saying anything.
Enough footage.
Yeah. You get to the end of the video, like, oh, you should have done this, you should have done this.
Actually, no, I think one other person who people really forget in pre-production is the editor. Because a lot of people give the editor footage here, but the editor was not there. Even in the first trip through, they are trying to put up a story that they have not been given in-depth understanding. I think the editor and even the sound designer, not location sound, the ultimate sound designer, these are people who need to be there in the pre-production process so that they also help think through.
All HODs, all HODs don't go ahead and say, okay, you know what, you post, guys. Just wait for us to give you the right.
You know what, this sounds like, this discussion right now, this portion of it sounds like the makings of a really good workshop for filmmakers in terms of some of the things that, you know, they should prepare for. The people from Kenya Film Community watching this would be something that I think a lot of people would benefit from, just the preparation for the main event. Now, I'd like for us to kind of push on because we have two more films to discuss. And let's move back to the feature film genre, to one of the ones that was really a standout from all of the films that we watched. And that was produced by Moneki Njandu from Kiambu County, neighboring Nairobi County, Kegwoya. For those of you who don't understand what Kegwoya means, it means coward in Kikuyu. When Kikuyu, I don't know how to pronounce it. Kegwoya, right? Kikuyu. Poor pronunciation, right? But if we have a promo for the, I keep on calling it a promo, the trailer for Kegwoya, sorry, it's just TV language, it's screaming in here. For Kegwoya would be, you know, it'd be really cool for the audience to see what exactly we're talking about, and then we get into the meat of the discussion around that. So here's that trailer.
Asa. What did you go at? Ja. Ya. Ah, joro diga ni. Ono. Aya. To digiri di ko iskenda ya matube.
Visione si di tu foto.
Ni gore ha? Ako matube mane mako.
Ne mako.
Ne mako. Acha ti ugo. Rami ukone wale kitima matube maya ai. Ni gore ha. No ko tio e. Diari ani.
Mako.
Ole colchia la tagata. Ai. Okay, ne mako. Aya, ndo ise ole kika ngitha ici. Ugo ti ugo ni uthie piu. Ah.
Kigwa kinu kire nyina. Jabere ya relate.
I'm pregnant.
Pregnant.
Yes.
Tadhikiria mwana ucio ni wao?
Waku.
Niĩ. Acha. Mwana ucio ti wakwa. No igua. Na niĩ ndigwĩtĩkĩra. Ũrangua ta mwana nĩkĩ? Niĩ ngoma ngathi ngacaria mbia. Ngaco na kũu nja. Wĩra waku no kũrĩa arũme gũkũ. Ũcoke ũnjikũnjĩra atĩ wĩna ũyũ pregnant na mwana ucio ni wakwa. Ndigwĩtĩkĩra. Kani. Take. Take indo ici ciaku.
Kai, ni hathaka ai.
Hathaka.
Riu wewe mundurume wa thaa cigana mundu woya school fees kuma gwĩ twana tũnini arabu ũgatũhira mahu ũgatũte.
Soka dudini yako.
Aya.
Soka dudini yako.
Kiguya nĩ kĩagĩa mũgambo rĩu. Ya bara. Ndĩtio.
selected by the Kenya Film Commission, films from across the country. The trailer that you just watched was of Kegoya, a film that was picked for this festival, produced by Monique Jade from Kiambu County. And we'll get to that discussion in a moment, but there was something that we were talking about in a break in relation to the thriller, the short film Lucy, which is about creation of tension. And there's a question that's been sent via the hashtag Real County Film Festival by Michael Amish. I'll direct it to you, Lily. How do you create tension in a movie without making it look obvious?
Thank you, Nana.
Yes. Is that some tension that you're trying to create?
I'm very tense right now. It has to do with a combination of factors, like we saw in Lucy. It has to do with the acting, it has to do with the pacing, it has to do with the script, it has to do with the directing. Like, all of those things have to fuse so beautifully, such that when I'm watching it, I'm like, oh my God, what is going to happen next? Why is this person like this? You know, all of those things have to fuse properly. And it's not something that you can tell someone bit by bit. Step one, write a great script. Step two, it's something you have to feel. It's very emotional. You have to feel it.
Emotion. Like, how do you get people, actors, to emote correctly so that they can create the kind of emotion that you're looking for that translates on screen to me?
Prepare. It is important that actors read through, internalize character. Let them have the script even a month or 2 or 3 before, but let them be able to read through together, understand the character, break down this character, their life, their background, and all that. So that by the time they take in this role, it's not like, should I do this? No, that's no longer a question. It's like, how can I do this my way? That should now be the question. But I think even actors need to prep. Sometimes you find there's a movie coming up, the actors are given a script a week to, and then the day for Reiki is the day they are also reading the script together. So, you know, if we have not met, we are writing the same movie. We all got our script a long time ago, we all have our lines. But if we have not had a read through together, there's what you call chemistry. If we don't have that chemistry, it's not something we can fake. Yeah, it's not something we can fake.
You know, should tap into an experience they've had. That also helps. If they tap into an experience that makes them emote, the character that they're supposed to emote, then it makes it a little easier to do.
Speaking of emotions, Kegoya was an incredibly, packed film when it came to emotions. And King, you were very emotional about Kegoya in the jury panel.
We wonder why.
But actually, let's ask that question. Why? Like, why was it such like an important film for you to have watched?
I feel like we immediately, as an audience, connected with the protagonist. We want them to succeed. That was a classical hero's journey, in terms of narrative work. But everything else came together for me. Also, particularly because of the authenticity of everything from the story. It wasn't a hugely diabolical story. It was a very simple story. A coward in this particular village who's bullied around, but you can only take it for so long before you fight back. And how they showed that.
Before you fight back because of
There's always interest in the that's the catalyst for them. But you're actually right, yes, because she was a catalyst for him, to just change. The lead interest and the mother, they were the catalyst, and also his past. I feel like the filmmakers for that particular film tried to work through as many details as possible. Story-wise, for example, the backstory of our protagonist's father, he was a boxer, and all these things. I felt like they really tried to string everything together. The language they chose to shoot, they could easily have done it in Swahili or English. But how how they emoted when they spoke in Kikuyu, it really came out strongly.
You know, for Kegoya, for sure, kudos to the main actor in Kegoya for even looking apart, just looking, rain, just incredibly handpicked in many respects, right? But I think something you and I agreed on was just how visceral the reaction that someone would have watching the film to the villain in the film, right? The Boda guy, what was his name? Wangi? I can't remember his name. But, and again, here's to you, we'll start with you, King. What makes, an incredibly convincing villain? Now, we've spoken about an entire range of characters. We have the dunce in Lame. We have the mysterious woman in Lucy. But what makes that killer villain?
I think for me, it's almost the same thing that makes an incredible hero. You want to feel like you sort of understand the rationale behind why the villain is the way he is. And, this guy, our villain, was a spoiled brat. He was just a bad guy. But he did that because he felt he was protected. His family was part of the government, the local government, and everything. And even just how, again, I'll come back to this one, the authenticity of how he just, if I looked at that man off the set, I'd still have those same emotions I had when I was watching that film.
Yeah.
Because I felt like he carried the character. He carried his character through and through.
Lily, writing for a very simple story, as King had put it, that was Kegoya in terms of the storyline. Sometimes it's the simple things that we trip up on. What were the landmines that you feel perhaps a scriptwriter avoided in doing this? And if there were any that he didn't, what were they? Can we pick them out?
Okay, could you ask that question?
What were the things that could have gone wrong that didn't, and the things that should have gone right that didn't go right?
If they tried to make this character, if they borrowed anything Western, it would have gone really wrong. Because just like King said, if you keep it authentic, then I know who this guy is.
Yeah.
I get to identify with him, I know his struggles because they feel real. So the writer kept to that, and that was really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something that we haven't spoken about this entire time, which is the locations that were selected. You do a lot of location scouting in your own work, right? So what for you were the hits and the misses in Kegoya as far as what we saw on screen, the places that we saw?
Some of the hits, I think, were like the Boda place, because most of them are at the junction, at the corner, something like that.
Yeah, lying on the borders in language reports. Exactly.
Then Kegoya's home. Yeah, even the mother telling you, when the mother comes and tells him, you've always practicing karate, you can tell, the ambience in which he's even practicing karate sincerely, he is still very scared to go practice with people. The village place where they have a picnic with the girlfriend, I think that was a classic for those of us who grew up in the countryside. I think that was a classic.
We're identifying with one.
I like those ones. What I felt was a bit of a miss was, I don't know whether it was Jororo Mwangi's, the girlfriend's house. Yeah, I felt that the house felt a bit too green, too wide, too flat for the kind of ambience that we had noticed and seen. And for parents whose daughter can pretend that they've gone to school in the north and they know the girl is lost, I'm wondering, can they be in such a house? Because such a house, I know my daughter is already gone and I've already put a search within the same village. So how could it be that the parents live in such a house and their daughter is in the village with the village villain, and they don't know? So I felt that one was a miss in terms of location, because the location tells a lot about the characters.
let's focus on one of perhaps the minor characters in this film, which was the love interest of the villain. And one particular thing that we saw again and again and again is the theme of suicide or attempted suicide. Like the merits and demerits, well, no merits, the demerits of suicide aside, the interpretation of how a person would do that. How do you do it in such a way that it doesn't seem slapstick or like we've seen this before? This is how we imagine suicide goes, but then you still are able to communicate the same sense of, I guess, desperation that would lead someone into a dark place such as that.
I think a lot of scriptwriters or directors need to watch 1,000 Ways to Die. Yeah, because during the Real County Festival, I think it was like there was this one way of dying where I think people put in their mouth, they fall and they fall by the mouth. I'm like, we have 1,000 ways to die. You can die choke from taking wine or taking water. Even a sweet can just enter your nose. You know, there are 1,000 ways to die. You can laugh till you die. And it's true. Yeah, so there are 1,000 ways to die. People need to think of those. Yeah.
No, that's an important point that you raise, Zippy, because some of the things, if we're honest, also that we saw again and again, including Kegoya, which was one of the films that we liked, some of these overdone dialogues, scenes, interpretations that kind of leave the audience feeling very, very flat.
Actually, even Kegoya, if you were a fan of Kenny Rogers,
yes,
the coward of the county. It felt like this is the coward of the county.
Yeah.
The song from
down to the guitarist in the bar.
Exactly, yes.
True. No, but lots to like nonetheless from Kegoya. It was one of our favorite picks, I believe, from the jury panel. And if you want to watch it, like I said earlier, scroll back onto your timeline. You will be able to watch Kegoya as part of the Real County Film Festival. And if you have any questions, coming up to the top of the hour, in just a few minutes, you can still send your questions via the hashtag Real County Film Festival. If we don't answer them today, don't worry. We'll be with you for the next 3 days. So msiboeke sana for Kenya. But I want us to end on a high. And this was one of those standout short films, going back to this subgenre, that made all of us sit up. It was an unexpected story. The pace was right. I could talk until the cows come home about this. But this one came from Garissa County. This was curated by Omar Hamza. Let's take a look at that trailer and then get into the final discussion for the day. That's the trailer to Hurriyet that was produced by Omar Hamza from Garissa County. Incredibly mysterious trailer. I don't know whether it was my favorite ones, in spite of the fact that I was falling over myself, complimenting the film. I think perhaps if there was one thing not to like, it was the trailer. But nonetheless, it was a really, really good short film, right? And I think the best place to start about the short film is from a question that was asked on the hashtag by Jessica. Again, I'll address it to you, Lily. When writing a script, do you have the ending in mind, or do you let the story determine the ending? Now, the reason I ask that is because Hurriyet was an incredibly well-written script. So maybe answer the question with Hurriyet in mind.
More often than not, you have an ending in mind because it helps you, it guides you. Because we can ramble on as writers and just continue until tomorrow. You have to keep your story tight and right. Okay? You have tight and right.
Off camera, you should that you would tell us, maybe, but we are, as the watershed period has got past, self-respecting
and we're back. Anyway, so you have to keep yourself, you have to make sure that what you want to communicate in this story is what you want to communicate. So you have to have the ending in mind. You have to know what are your characters going to say here, what are we creating. Just like we talked about tension, this movie has it. They know how to create that tension. Yeah, so you really have to be on point because you have very limited time to communicate what you want to communicate.
Story-wise, cinematically, in terms of some of the technical things that were brought to bear in this film, what was it that stood out for you, King?
I love that the cinematographer really thought through his shots, whether it was the close-up shots or the wide shot reveal at the very end on the rooftop, on a slider or a dolly to reveal, as the lady walked past the clothes and those the reveals. I felt like even just watching that thing on silent, visually it worked. It was definitely well thought through. Kudos to the director, the cinematographer, for taking that time to just make sure they sculpt each of the frames that were in the film.
Zippy, what was the best thing about Hearing that you want to share with the public?
One, that it addressed a very trivial issue, the issue of, Al-Shabaab, bombing, and from the perspective of having a female lead. But I like the fact that in the twist, in the end, he did it to save his brother, but he said he will not make people lose lives using her talent. So I thought that was very powerful to me. But also, on the director's side, I liked the way he made like two scenes going hand in hand, and then in the very last minute, we hear the shot. So there are two things, if you're following the story, it could feel like, okay, the lady has been shot, but how do we know? The shot, I think the sound in this film also was really good. The camera movement, all that was, I think, really good. But for me, it's the turning point of the story in the end. Is this lady going to give this man the bomb or not? But she says, no, you can kill me, but my brother is now safe. I am okay, And I thought that was too beautiful. To me, it is the sacrifices women make to bring their family, brothers and sisters to their life. And also to keep just the whole generation of people like white, innocent people. I thought that was a big sacrifice.
For me, and I'll get to you in a moment, Lily. For me, the thing that stood out for me was, having reported about a time when there was an incredible amount of xenophobia against people who are of Kenyan Somali extraction. Watching the film really felt like something was being said, something was being teased out about the dilemmas that a lot of people. Exactly, and some of these things that you even start to think about and question in your head as you navigate your way past the story. That for me was really the surprising element in the story, and I really, really loved that. Shout out to you, Omar, and to the actresses and actors and everybody on set who produced that. Lily, you had a comment as well with respect to some of the things that Zippy was saying. I'd ask you to give us that comment as one of your final comments for the day. Ones you can save.
I have two final quick
source for the next 3 days.
Quick moments.
Go ahead.
I loved Hearing. The tension was fantastic. I was literally like on the edge of my seat. Also, the way they left us guessing. Like we didn't know, did the lady survive? Who survived? What happened? How does the brother go on? That is very important in film.
Okay. Final comments, King.
regards to hearing?
In regards to hearing and perhaps also some of the things that people will be seeing today and have seen.
I think for me, simplicity and thoroughness grossly overlooked in the filmmaking process. We always want to produce something that's stellar, but we forget to go back to the basics. And if we look at the films that succeeded, they went back to the basics, did the easy things correctly, took their time. Yeah.
Hey, man, King, you're coming with all of the wisdom today, but that's true. Like, do the easy things, right? That's a really good tip for those of you who are watching and who are involved in film. Zippy, your final comments.
Keep it original. Yeah. We can never say there's no story that has never been told on the face of the world. But how do you make it yours? How do you make it authentic to you?
Yeah.
And don't bother the audience. If you don't like it any bit, trust me, the audience won't like that bit too.
Yeah. All right, and my final comments are: we shall see you tomorrow. We're still talking about the Real County Film Festival. Of course, in all seriousness, I think what I enjoyed about the 4 films that we're talking about is, as everybody on this panel has said again and again, authenticity, right? That the thing about a story is that it must appeal to me from a point of view of my own understanding. It must bring me out of some place that is familiar to me and locate me in something that does not feel forced. And for all of the pluses and minuses that we discussed, I think that's something that was a baseline for each of the films that we watched, right? So like I said, we are, in all seriousness, going to be here tomorrow discussing more films, short films, documentaries on this Kenya Film Festival. Coming up next, of course, is a workshop on the same. So keep it here. You can keep tweeting and on that hashtag, and if there's questions that you have from today, we'll try and address them tomorrow. Final round of introductions before you see them again tomorrow. Writer extraordinaire.
Please highlight the extraordinaire.
We shall highlight it. In fact, I think it's something there. Filmmaker extraordinaire, King. Yeah, thank you very much for being here today. Doctor, lecturer, producer extraordinaire.